How you doing, everybody? So welcome to distance learning. This is going to be the Muscular System chapter. So what you're looking at right now is at the classroom. This particular assignment you should see Thursday morning at 9 o'clock. I have all the other assignments scheduled to go to be released on different days. Okay, so we're going to be doing the Muscular System from now, which is the 19th through April 6th, when you will have a test on the muscular system. All right. So we're going to be using one PowerPoint, and that PowerPoint is listed right here. Okay. And we're going to be going through that PowerPoint a little bit for the first two assignments. And then for assignment 3, 4, and 5, we're going to be looking at diagrams and things like that. And then you will have a test. So let's just take a look at the assignment for today. So today's assignment is number 1, watch the video. Okay, that's this video. So you're watching it, continue to watch it until the end. Number 2, after you are done watching the video, you are going to write an essay. And that essay is going to describe the differences and similarities that you find between the 3 major muscle types. And those muscle types are cardiac, skeletal, and smooth muscle. In your essay, you should include where you can find each of the 3 muscle types, anatomical differences. So like that means structural differences between the 3 things. That's what anatomy means, remember. And then lastly, the functional differences between the 3. So how they work, right? So what does cardiac muscle do in comparison to skeletal and smooth? What do they all have in common? How do they differ? Okay, so write yourself a nice essay on that. You can have you can have a paragraph on each if you'd like, or you can just do a paragraph on the location of all 3, a paragraph on the anatomical differences of all 3, and a paragraph on the functional difference, which is between all 3. Okay, that is to be due tonight by 11 p.m. And then the last thing that I want you guys to do is I want you to go to Kia, and I assigned an activity. This is not a graded assignment, but I'm going to trust you to go there and do it. It's a very quick little activity that deals with the 3 types of muscle tissue, and it is called Anatomy: Muscle Tissue Types, and it should be available to you. If you can't see it, I've never assigned an activity on Kia, so I'm not sure where it's going to show up, but just give a look out for it. If this works well, I'll continue to do activities. If it doesn't and you guys can't find it, maybe I'll just scratch the idea, and then we'll just do quizzes and tests like normal. Anyway, all right. So with that said, I'm going to be writing on the screen and erasing on the screen. So bear with me. I'm still getting used to this setup, but let's get into it. Okay. So excuse me. So here is the crazy PowerPoint that I'm going to be using with this crazy muscle guy on the front of it. He's pretty scary looking, but also pretty cool. I guess this is like Thanos if he was skinned. Okay. So we're going to be going through maybe 20 slides today. Okay. And then you are going to have a quiz actually on the 23rd. Okay. So you're going to be having a quiz on the 23rd. That should have been in the classwork. I'll revisit that at the end. Okay. But did you know, okay, that more than 50% of your body's weight is muscle? Okay, more than 50%. So the majority of your body weight is muscle tissue. Okay, muscle is made up of proteins and water. And here are some fun facts about muscles. There are muscles in the roots of your hair that give you goosebumps. We talked about those. Those were called the erector pili muscles. It takes 17 muscles to smile and 42 muscles to frown. So you actually use more muscles when you're sad than you do when you're happy. So it's harder to be sad than it is to happy, or it requires more work. The hardest working muscle in the body is the eye. Okay, your eye is, you have muscles in your eye that are going to move your eyes all around. You have muscles in your eye that are going to contract or dilate your pupils. Okay, and they are constantly working all the time, looking at things around you. Okay, so they are the hardest working muscles in the human body. And the largest muscle in the human body is the gluteus maximus, and that is also known as your butt cheeks, right? Whenever you see the term maximus or minimus or anterior, superior, inferior after a muscle name, so gluteus maximus, that term maximus is referring to a large, okay, maximus means large, version of the gluteus muscle, okay? So if there was only one gluteus muscle or one glute, they wouldn't have to put maximus. The reason that they're putting maximus is because there are more than one gluteus muscles, and they have to distinguish one from the other. So the larger of the two gluteus muscles is called the gluteus maximus, and the smaller of the two gluteus muscles is called the gluteus minimus. Okay. Here is just a very, very typical diagram of a muscle person that you would find in a textbook. And again, you see here it says tibialis anterior, right? If there wasn't a tibialis posterior, they wouldn't have to name it anterior. Okay, they would just call it the pectoralis or the biceps or the deltoid, right? But because they have a word there that distinguishes location, you know that there has to be another type of that muscle. Okay, let's keep going down. So what do the muscles do? Muscles are responsible. Okay, all muscles are responsible for movement. It doesn't not matter what kind of muscle we're talking about. All the muscles, okay, and these are all the muscles here, skeletal, cardiac, and smooth, all of these muscles are responsible for movement. Movement of the skeleton, okay, in the skeletal muscle example, movement of the heart, and movement of our hollow organs, which are things like our digestive system, right? And that's what all these muscles are going to do is movement. That's the key word of the muscular system is movement. So let me scroll down a little bit. Whoops, that's going to make me right. Okay, I'm going to have to keep switching back and forth to this. That's okay. Okay. Muscles are the only tissue in the body that contract. Okay, contract means to get smaller. Excuse me, guys, I got something in my throat. Okay, they get smaller. That's what contract means. So muscles, when they're, so here's Rosie the Riveter. And what she's doing is she's contracting her muscle here. If her arm was straight out, okay, with her hand over here, that would be a relaxed muscle, okay? But when she flexes her muscle and decreases the angle between the bones that are being connected, so one bone is her ulna and radius, and the other bone is her humerus, okay? If we had, so let me erase this real quick. If we had, a protractor here, okay, this protractor would say, 180 degrees. And then when she reduces that angle, okay, here, when she flexes, she is contracting her muscles. Okay, so all your muscles are going to contract in some way, either by flexion, which is what she's doing here. Okay, when you make your biceps, when you flex your biceps, that's a contraction of your bicep muscle, which is, your arms, your guns, right? If you extended your arm and you brought it back down to this flat plane, this 180 degree plane, you are also contracting another muscle. You're contracting the triceps on the back, okay? So in one sense, we're contracting by flexing the arm. And in the other sense, we're contracting the opposite side, which is the tricep, by extending the arm, okay? By extending the arm. So when she has her muscle like this, she is flexing, which is a contraction of one muscle group. But when she extends, when she puts her arm straight outwards, she is contracting her tricep, which is called extension. Okay, and then extension is when the angle gets larger, and we'll talk about that more later. Okay, your body's energy is converted by muscle cells, or it is produced by muscle cells in the mitochondria. Okay, we talked about mitochondria when we discussed cellular organelles, and we said that the mitochondria is going to be that organelle that is responsible for making ATP, okay, which is the cell's energy. Oops, excuse me. Whoops. Where did I go? Open that back up. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Like I said, still getting used to it. Okay. So here are some pictures of the three different types of muscles. Okay, and we're going to look at each one of these individually because that's what this whole lesson is about. Here's cardiac muscle. Here's skeletal muscle, which looks very similar to cardiac muscle, except there's some branching that goes on. And we'll talk about that later. And here's smooth muscle. Smooth muscle looks very, very different than skeletal muscle. And you can see where you find them, right? Skeletal muscle is muscles that attach to your skeleton, cardiac on your heart, and smooth on your digestive system or your hollow organs. Okay, here's some more pictures. And we can see a little bit more of the anatomy. Okay, I'm giving you answers for your essay. Okay, here's some of the anatomy differences or the anatomical differences of these three muscle types. Here we see the skeletal muscle, which is very linear, right? These muscle fibers, that's what we call them, muscle fibers, are going in very straight lines. They're very separated from one another, okay, but they're joined together in this very organized, almost cylinder. Okay, it almost reminds me of like bridge cables. Bridge cables are, very, very strong linear cables that all work together to hold up a large force or a large load. And all your skeletal muscles are going to be very straight, like these fibers are, because muscles work in one direction. Muscles don't work in many different directions. Muscles only work in one direction. And that's why you have so many muscles. Okay, in order to bring your arm, if this was your elbow, and this is your bicep, and this is your forearm. Okay, it's your bicep. Okay, there's one muscle that brings your arm up. There's another muscle that brings your arm down because your muscles don't do the same function as each other. They only work in one direction. So the bicep only works in one direction, bringing the muscle up to flex your arm. It cannot bring it down. Cardiac muscle looks similar in the sense that you see these stripes, and we'll get to know what those stripes are later. Okay, but we see branching. We actually see, one muscle fiber splitting and branching off into two muscle fibers. And that's going to allow the fibers to surround this heart in all different directions, right? We want this heart, it's a three-dimensional, everything's three-dimensional, but it's not only working in one direction. This heart is working in order to pump, right? It's more of a spherical organ, and the muscles have to wrap around it in all different directions in order for that muscle to work properly and to beat properly in all different directions. The smooth muscle, they're much shorter. They almost look like like little cigars in a sense. There are no stripes. There are no striations. That's what we call those little stripes. Okay, and that's why they're called smooth. They're smooth because they don't have these little stripes or these striations in them. Okay, and they're going to help to contract your digestive system. Okay. Okay, so again, where do we find skeletal muscle? We find it in our limbs, in our muscles that are attached to our skeleton. They are striated. Okay, like I said before, they are striated, which means that they have those lines on them. Okay, those striations. So if we have our cylinder here, which looks like our muscle, okay, it had these lines, and those lines are the striations. Okay, skeletal muscles are also multinucleated, which means they have more than one nuclei in them. Okay, and the reason that they have more than one nuclei in them is because they require so much energy, and energy comes from, or ATP, right, is our energy, and ATP comes from the mitochondria. Okay, and mitochondria need enzymes in order to produce ATP. Okay, if we don't have the proper enzymes for glycolysis and the proper enzymes for the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain, then ATP is never going to be produced, and these muscles are never going to work because these muscles work on ATP, just like everything else in your body works on ATP. Okay, so we need lots of nuclei in order to produce all the enzymes, because that's what your nuclei holds your DNA, and your DNA is the blueprint for making proteins and making enzymes. And if you have only one nucleus for a very, very large muscle that needs a lot of energy, it's never going to be able to keep up with the energy demands that cell needs. Okay, Cardiac muscle found in the heart only. That's why it's called cardiac. Anytime you see the term cardiac, it means heart. They are striated just like skeletal muscles are striated, okay? And they only have one nuclei. They are not multinucleated, okay? The reason for that is that cardiac muscles tend to be shorter and not as long as skeletal muscles. Skeletal muscles are very, very long fibers. Okay, they can span, the entire length of a muscle. So if you think about a bicep goes from your shoulder to your elbow, and you can have, skeletal muscle fibers that are extremely long. With the cardiac muscles aren't as long, so they don't need as many nuclei spread out around them. Okay, smooth muscle are found in the viscera. Remember, the term viscera deals with the linings of our cavities, right? Or the linings of our organs. We talked about visceral pleura, visceral peritoneum, visceral pericardium, things like that. So we find these in hollow organs. Okay? They are not striated. They do not have striations, okay? And they are only uninucleated or mononucleated, okay? Down here is very important too, because this deals with their physiology, how they work, right? So skeletal muscle is the only muscle in the body that is completely voluntary, which means you have to use your nervous system. You have to use your nervous system for all of them, but you have to actually think about moving your skeletal muscles, right? When you want to catch a ball, you have to think about where to put your hand in order to get the ball in your glove or to get the ball in your hand properly. And your brain moves your hand to where you're telling it to go. Okay. Involuntary means that you do not necessarily control these muscles by thinking about them. They are happening regardless of what you want them to do, right? So your heart is an involuntary muscle. You can affect the rate that your heart is beating, but you cannot stop your heart from beating just by thinking about it, right? You can stop your heart from beating in other ways that I wouldn't suggest you do, but you can slow it down by meditating and breathing properly, but you can never make your heart stop beating. You can put your hand down, like if you were in class and you had your hand up, you can make a conscious effort to voluntarily put your hand back down on the desk. You cannot voluntarily stop your heart from beating. Same thing with your digestive system. You cannot stop your digestive system from doing digestion by thinking about it. Right? There might be things that cause your digestive system to stop working, but you personally cannot think about your digestive system slowing down or not working because it is an involuntary muscle group. Okay. Okay. So skeletal muscles are smooth. Skeletal and smooth muscles are elongated. A muscle cell and a muscle fiber are the same term, so we can think of those things interchangeably if I say them. Okay, the contraction of muscles, the shortening of a muscle, is due to the movement of what we call microfilaments. Microfilaments are in all muscle cells, okay, all skeletal, smooth, and cardiac muscle cells, and they're protein fibers that are going to shrink so that the muscle can shrink with it, right? So when your arm is straight out, your bicep is at its longest. When you flex your bicep, that muscle gets shorter. And what happens is those microfilaments are shortening in order for that muscle to move the bones that it's attached to, right? Because that bicep is attached to your forearm. So when it shrinks, it pulls on the bones of your forearm, okay, and moves your forearm in a direction. Okay, there are some terms here that you might want to know when talking about muscles. Okay, myo and mys. Okay, these refer to muscles whenever you see those particular terms. Okay, so a myocardial infarction is a heart attack, right? Myocardium is the muscles of the heart. Okay. Yeah, so that's that. Don't worry about sarcomeres. Okay, we're not gonna get into the microscopic anatomy of a muscle, but a sarcomere is a microscopic anatomical feature of a muscle fiber, which we don't really need to know for that right now. Okay, so muscles come in different shapes. All the muscles come in different shapes, especially your skeletal muscles. Okay, some muscles can be triangular. Okay, and if I let me just pull up a muscle diagram. For you guys. Okay, so if I take a look at one of these pictures, okay, let's use this one. I like this one. Nope, don't want to do that. Okay. So if I open up this diagram here and I go back to here, we can see that there are triangular muscles, spindle, flat, and circular. So let's go find some of those, right? So we can see very clearly a lot of triangular muscles, especially in the back. Okay, we have the trapezius muscle here, which is a triangular muscle. Okay, we see, let's go back here, spindle fibers, and those are found here in your arms, your biceps and your triceps. Okay, flat muscles. Okay, could be the muscles of your forehead here. Okay, it's a flat muscle. That's the frontalis muscle. Okay, the diaphragm, which you can't see on that picture because it's more interior. And then you got circular muscles. Okay, circular muscles are muscles like your mouth, your eyes. Okay, so if we do that, let's see if I can zoom in. See if I can zoom in. There we go. Okay, you can see the mouth and the eyes are circular muscles right here. Okay, circular muscle, eyes and mouth. Also, your anus is a circular muscle as well. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about skeletal muscle for a little while. Skeletal muscle, almost all your skeletal muscles are attached by tendons to your bones. Okay, so all skeletal muscles are attached to your bones and they are attached with tendons. So your bicep, if we go back to this guy here, okay, all the white areas, all these white areas, those are all tendons. Okay, so if we look, over here, especially in the abdominal region or the back region here, this muscle here, your back muscle, this latissimus dorsi muscle, which you don't need to know the names just yet, but that's attached to your spine right here. Okay, this muscle here, this big muscle here, is attached to your spine with this white stuff here. And this white stuff is a tendon. It's a big tendon. And you see a lot of these different muscles. You see white at all the joints. And that white area is going to be tendons that are connecting your muscles to your bones. Okay. Again, and what you're going to see a lot in this particular PowerPoint, you're going to see a lot of reiterated stuff. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the reiterated stuff. Okay, so they are multinucleated. Skeletal muscle, again, multinucleated. They're striated. They're voluntary. Okay, tendons are made of collagen. Okay, and collagen is a protein that is a very tough protein, but it does loosen over time. Okay, there is collagen in all of your skin. There's collagen in all your muscles and your tendons, and basically it connects your muscles to your bones. And as time goes on, the collagen kind of wears and breaks down, and your joints aren't as stable as they used to be when you're a young man, like you guys are now, or a young woman. Your collagen fibers are nice and strong. Okay, and as you get older, like my age, okay, you're getting up in almost 40 years old, even older than that. I see my dad who's 70. The joints aren't as good as they used to, be, and that's due in some part to the collagen in the tendons breaking down over time. Okay, we're going to find our skeletal muscle in our limbs. We're also going to find it in our torso, in our chest, and they're going to produce movement. They're going to maintain posture. They're going to help you stand up straight. That's what that means. They're going to maintain posture, help you stand up straight. That's important to your anatomy. They're going to generate lots of heat, and we know that because we sweat when we move around a lot, right? When we're using our skeletal muscles a lot, okay, a lot of heat is generated, and that causes us to sweat. And it also helps to stabilize our joints. Okay, if you looked at our joints when we did the skeletal system, we saw that these joints were only held together by ligaments and things like that. The big thick muscles that surround all of our joints of our shoulders and our elbows and our hips and knees, things like that, all of that muscle is going to help stabilize our joints. Okay, so each fiber of a skeletal muscle is a cylinder. It's a long fiber, which is cylindrical shaped. They are multinucleated again, like I said. They are typically between 50 and 60 millimeters in diameter, and they can be up to 10 centimeters in length. Okay, so if you think of a normal 12-inch ruler, 12-inch ruler is 30 centimeters. Okay, so a 12-inch ruler is 30 centimeters. So you would say you could have a 10 centimeter long muscle fiber. So if you had 1/3 of a foot ruler, it would be as long as a 10 centimeter muscle fiber. Okay, and again, the contractile elements are these things called myofibrils. Okay, there's that term myo. Okay, myo again. Okay. Here is a microscopic view of skeletal muscle. We saw this when we did tissues, okay, when we did the tissue slides. And here are all my striations. Okay, here's a nuclei. All these little black dots are nuclei. This is multinucleated. You can see all these little black dots. Okay, they're very linear in shape and very, very striated. Okay. Okay, so that was skeletal muscle. Smooth muscle. Okay, again, no striations. They're going to be spindle shaped. They're going to have single nuclei. They're going to be involuntary, and they're going to be mainly found in the walls of our hollow organs. And again, I can't say it enough that our hollow organs are going to be our digestive organs. Okay, digestive organs, like your stomach, your intestines, your esophagus, those things. Okay. They line the wall of the viscera. Okay, the viscera is the surface of our digestive organs, our hollow organs. So this entire inner surface and outer surface of this stomach is going to be smooth muscle. Okay, they can be found in longitudinal, which is this way. Okay, or circular arrangements. Okay, depending on where on the organ it's going to be. Okay. They can alternate contraction of circular and longitudinal motions. So that's going to help things like the stomach move in different directions. Like I said before, skeletal muscles only move in one direction. They're very linear. Okay. So your arm is going to move in one direction up. Your biceps is going to move in one direction. Your legs move in many directions, but there's only one muscle that controls each movement, right? So if you wanted to move, let's go back to this guy real quick. If you wanted to move this leg out, there's one muscle that moves that leg out. You want to move it backwards, okay? There's one muscle that moves it backwards. It's not the same muscle that moved it out, right? So for the muscles of your hollow organs, like your stomach and your heart and things like that, they can switch back and forth between longitudinal movements and circular movements or diagonal movements, so that they can move in lots of different directions, because that's their function, right? Their function is different than the skeletal muscle, so they're not going to have the same anatomy as the skeletal muscle. Okay. Again, they're spindle shaped, mononucleated, no striations. Okay, and let's talk about these terms here, actin and myosin. Okay, actin and myosin are two proteins that you find in all muscles. Okay, these are found in all muscles. Okay, we're going to talk a lot about actin and myosin when we get to skeletal muscle a little bit more. Actin is called your fast twitch muscle fibers, and myosin is your slow twitch muscle fibers. Okay, so actin fibers of your muscles allow you to do things very quickly, but for a short period of time. So fast and short time. Okay, myosin allows you to do things for a long time, or a longer amount of time. Okay, but much slower pace, right? So a great way to talk about actin and myosin is when you talk about different types of runners, right? So if you had a sprinter, their genetics are going to show that a sprinter has a lot more actin in their bodies than a marathon runner. You know what I mean. A marathon runner is not going to have a lot of actin. A marathon runner is going to have a lot of myosin. A marathon runner is not going to be good in a sprint, and a sprinter is not going to be good in a marathon. Okay, and the reason for that is because people are born with different amounts of actin and myosin. So, like Usain Bolt is going to have tons of actin in his body, and that's we can see that because he is a great sprinter. Right? He's never really entered distance running, I don't think. Okay, extended distance running that I know of, because he does not have myosin as much myosin fibers as say like a Kenyan marathon runner that wins the New York Marathon almost every year. Okay, so that is the difference between actin and myosin and fast twitch and slow twitch fibers. Okay, and they are going to be present in your smooth muscles as well. Okay, here is a picture of smooth muscle under a microscope. Okay, you do not see the striations. You do not see many nuclei in one spindle. Okay, this particular, if I just kind of outline one of these spindle fibers here, so we have, one, it's kind of coming like this. Okay, that is one fiber, and there's one nuclei there. Okay, when we looked at the skeletal muscle, we saw many little purple dots that indicated lots of nuclei in that particular muscle cell. Okay, cardiac muscle, again, striations, they branch. That's the big thing with skeletal muscle, is that they branch out. Okay, they have this real tendency to branch, which means they're going up, and then all of a sudden they'll branch and split into two. Okay, kind of like a highway where you have an exit coming off of the main street kind of thing. They are also involuntary. They're only found in the heart, and they also have single nuclei as well. Okay. The main muscle of the heart, which is cardiac muscle, is the main muscle of the heart. They pump the mass of the heart. And you can see that they are the fibers of these muscles move in many different directions in order to contract and squeeze the different parts of the heart, right? The heart has chambers. There are upper chambers over here. There are lower chambers down here. And in order to get the blood in and out of these chambers, the entire thing has to squeeze. It's almost like having a ball in your hand, like a tennis ball in your hand, and squeezing the tennis ball. You're not squeezing that ball only from one direction. You're squeezing it from all directions because your fingers are wrapping around the entirety of that ball. The same thing's going to happen there. Okay, they are short and branched and interconnected with one another, kind of like a net. If you think of like a fishing net kind of wraps around something, okay, and covers the entire surface of that particular organ, okay, and that's what cardiac muscle does to the actual heart. Okay, they're striated again. They have one nuclei. They're joined with electrical synapses that we call gap junctions, and that's, your heart is electrified. Okay, your heart has something in it that's basically a pacemaker. A pacemaker is an artificial piece of medical equipment that can be placed in the heart that can keep your heart beating in the right pattern, right? But your heart has one of those built in already. Okay, your heart has an electrical component to it already, that and your brain is what controls the beating of your heart. But sometimes when that gets messed up, and doctors have to put in a pacemaker, okay, but normally people don't have pacemakers, are able to control the beating of their heart, or their brain is able to control the beating of their heart properly without that. Okay, and we call these gap junctions, we call these spaces in between our cardiac cells, we call them intercalated discs. And that's the second thing that's very, very important when talking about cardiac muscle. The first thing is that they're branched. The second thing is that they have intercalated discs. Only cardiac muscle has intercalated discs. And you can see them on the picture here, 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 these dark lines here, 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 and here. Okay, those are called intercalated discs, and those are the areas where the cardiac muscles are joined together with these electrical synapses, or these areas of electrical impulses where they cross from one cell to the next. Okay, and that's going to keep this whole thing in beat. It's going to keep it all the timing of the heart correct, because if the timing of the heart is incorrect, then you might not pump blood around your body properly. Okay, here is the picture of the cardiac muscle under a microscope, and you can see the intercalated discs. Here's example of one. Here's an intercalated disc. Here's another one. Here's another one. You see them all over the place. And you see them branching too. If this was skeletal muscle, you wouldn't see any white spaces. Okay. You see all these white spaces here and here and here. That's because these fibers are branching off and leaving spaces, almost like a net, right? If you had a net, a fishing net, okay, you would have, something that looks, like that, where you would have spaces in between. And your cardiac muscle kind of does something very similar, okay, but because of the branching, but that allows it to surround the heart in all different directions. Okay, so once again, what's controlling your heart? The skeletal muscle is controlled by your central nervous system. That is your brain and your spinal cord, and that is voluntary. And you doing anything, here's just an example of lifting a glass, but you throwing a ball, you jumping, you deciding to do something and then doing it is your skeletal muscle. Okay, your cardiac and your smooth muscle are regulated by your autonomic nervous system. Okay, that's what that A stands for, autonomic. And the autonomic nervous system deals with involuntary movements. Okay, your central nervous system deals with voluntary movements. Your autonomic deals with involuntary movements. Examples of that for your heart would be your heart beating, and an example of that for smooth muscle is peristalsis. Peristalsis is the movement of digestive muscles so that you can move your food around. So once you put your food in your mouth and you swallow it, there's nothing there besides gravity to kind of get that food down your throat and into your stomach and through your intestines and up and down your intestines and all that. If you relied solely on gravity, you would never be able to get your food around, okay? Because sometimes your intestines have to go up, right? We have intestines that go like this, and then some that go up and around, and then out the exit, out the anus. So how is food supposed to go up gravity when you're standing up straight? How is food supposed to go up against gravity? It's peristalsis. Peristalsis allows your food to move because it's a constant movement. It's like it's kind of like how a snake eats food, right? A snake will massage a mouse down its throat into its belly, and you kind of do the same thing. Your movement of your digestive system is going to slowly push the food from one area of the intestines to the next, like that. And that process is called peristalsis. Okay, and that is where, let me do this. Don't worry about this page. This page is, we're not going to do this page, okay? So we are going to do the next page, and that's where we're going to call it quits for today, okay? Where does all the energy for your muscles come from? This is just a quick review of biology, right? So the energy that you are making is called ATP. All your muscles use ATP. Every cell that you have uses ATP. And this ATP is a product of cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is the breakdown of glucose with the help of oxygen in order to take your food, and that's what glucose is. Glucose is your food. So you take your food, you break it down into glucose, and that glucose is put through glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, with the help of oxygen, and that's going to give you ATP. Okay, all of this respiration happens in the mitochondria. Okay, when you are fatigued, when you are tired, okay, the reason that you are tired is one of two things. You are low on ATP, and the reason you are low on ATP, okay, that's what makes you tired, having less energy, right? If your car had less gas in it, it wouldn't work as well. So when you have less energy, the reason you have less energy is because you are missing one of two things. You're either missing the food, okay? You either have little food in your body, or you are running out of oxygen, okay? So one of those two things, either you're running out of oxygen or you're running out of food, because those two things are needed by the mitochondria to go through respiration, okay? And that's what causes you to get tired during a sporting event or during a, some type of activity that takes a long time, okay? So that is going to do it for today. So make sure you go back to your assignment. You look at what your assignment is. Here's your assignment. Okay, I can even click on edit. Hold on. Okay, click on edit so we can see what the assignment says. Okay, so there you go. So watch the video. We did that. Okay, after watching the video, write your essay. Okay, you should include locations of each of the different muscles, anatomical differences, and functional differences. Okay, and you have an activity to do on Kia. Please complete it, and you can do it as many times as you like. Okay, we are going to have a quiz on, and I will actually put this in here so that you see it, for quiz tomorrow on lesson 1. And you will take that on Kia as normal. Okay, and there will be instructions for that. Let's not say tomorrow, because everyone's going to be like, what do you mean, Friday? Quiz on March 23rd. Okay, quiz on March 23rd. Okay, on lesson 1. Okay, so when you open this up at 9 a.m. on the 23rd, you will see directions for that Kia quiz. All right, everybody? It's been real. It's been fun. Make sure you study. And if you have any questions, make sure you see me on the Google Meet that I posted for you during this community period. Okay, you should have all gotten an email with that, and the link is there. So do not delete that. That is the same link that we're going to be using for all the Google Meets, and I will be available 12:30 to 1:15 on every Monday and Thursday. All right, gentlemen. I'll see you guys.